So welcome to our January 25th Tiverton School Committee meeting. This is a budget workshop. So Dave, we only have 9 people in the room, is that right? And then if others join, I'm not sure if anybody from the budget committee is gonna join. I did inform them of this and sent the links to John and Dave Perry. But can we tell if anybody's joined on YouTube?
We just started the YouTube feed up now as the meeting began. We can watch the count on there, as well as if anybody does try to join the Zoom, we'll be able to bring them in.
Okay, all right, good. All right, so Elaine, maybe a little bit late. Deb, you are there. Just make sure we do have a quorum.
Deb is here. She just stepped away for a minute, and I'm
Elaine's back.
Elaine's coming in now.
Yeah, I just want to at least have a quorum when we call the order. Oh, and there's Elaine. All right.
Yes.
So Peter, I'll turn the floor over to you. You're muted.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Dr. Larkin. The budget has, we have the FY23 budget. So I know we've given you a budget book. We've done our initial presentation. You had a presentation from Amy, Sarah, and Dave on the 3 budgets they represent. Tomorrow you'll have the principals present to you their budgets, but everything they're going to say to you tomorrow night is already contained in everything that you have here. And the bottom line is that we're looking for a level service budget that would allow us to maintain the current staff. So you're aware we've cut 27 positions in the last 2 years. And a level service budget, no new programs, no new staff, just making paying our contracts for our personnel contracts, our bus contracts, our special education, our transportation, calculated raises for energy, basically gets us to 35 million if I use round numbers. And that's as you're aware, it's 1.5 million less than a 4% increase that the town could provide us. So that again puts us in a precarious situation, and that 1.5 million, and here's the thing to be a little worried about.
You meant more, not less, right?
I'm sorry.
You meant 1.5 million more than is allowed by the charter. You said less.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, 1.5 million more than a 4% increase.
Right.
And the thing to be worried about is that's calculated on level funding for state aid. And right now, I know, we've mentioned this number to you and people have said, well, it's not on the RIDE website, but it's on every document that I get from the Superintendent's Association, and it's on every document that Amy gets from the Business Managers Association showing Tiverton with a $700,000 decrease in state aid. So, I mean, we can continue to wait and see. Obviously, we'll monitor it as closely as possible. But, for tonight's conversation, we could be looking at a $2.2 million deficit away from a level service budget.
Can I just stop you, Peter, because your numbers aren't making sense?
Okay, go ahead.
You said we have a projected deficit of 1.5 over and above what the town can give us. I don't think that's right. The town can give us $1 million, and then
So a level service budget, a level staff budget is $35,052,859.
right.
The town appropriation, 4% above the town contribution from last year is
It's the 33,531.
Yep. And
Okay.
so that's
Okay, I was just misunderstanding what you were saying. Thanks.
no problem. So that's the 1.5 delta. And again, that's predicated on 0 state aid or flat level state aid funding. And again, we're showing 700,000. So whoever you want to take the conversation, it's one way or the other. It's 1.5 million or 2.2 million.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Sure.
That projected decrease in state aid that you are referring to, is that a result of reduced enrollment, or is it a result of continued increases in property values, or is it a combination?
Property values, I think.
It's hold harmless on enrollment. And there actually was another number out there that had us 800,000 in the hole based on enrollment. We're confident that there'll be a hold harmless on enrollment again, at least what we're hearing from our constituents. So, which is why we're giving you the lower number.
I know the governor did say that in his State of the State
Yeah.
address.
Okay, Amy, you want to say something?
So the difference in the two numbers, yes, is enrollment was held harmless, but there was supposed to be discussion about whether they would hold us harmless for the free and reduced lunch component of that. And that I don't believe has been decided. However, the governor has issued, as of, I believe, late last week, his recommended budget, but with a big asterisk saying that, you know, projections are provided for LEA planning purposes only and are subject to the availability of funds, changes, the General Assembly, la, 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 la. So the initial two figures that came out, whether it's 700,000 or 800,000 less, was how RIDE calculated those numbers, whether holding harmless the school lunch numbers or not, under the current funding formula. Hence, Diane, to answer your question, property values. And then everyone was apparently speaking to the governor's office saying, you know, we need to get these budgeted, you know, estimated state aid numbers out. And, you know, they basically kept them flat for budgeting purposes only, but I'm not convinced that that's where they're going to stay.
So how could our property, so if we're held harmless for both free and reduced lunch and enrollment, then it would have to be property values.
Right. That's what I was trying to convey, is that
how can ours are outstripping Little Compton and Middletown and Portsmouth? Are increases in property values?
I haven't looked at that level of detail, but I can.
Well, I think I just wonder if it's something that we should look at in a little bit, because that's the variable, as I understand the funding formula, which, you know, it's not easy to understand, but
It may be
variable.
It may be based upon the available revenue too, that the state is going to divide up, because I know I haven't looked at their enrollment numbers, but in talking with the superintendents from Middletown and Newport and a few other districts near us, they're also seeing reductions in state aid.
Okay.
Assuming what, Peter, that some of the aid that's coming to the town is going to come to the school?
No,
No, just that, you know, we're talking about Tiverton's decrease in state aid and what's causing that. And it could be enrollment, but it also may be a byproduct of the available revenue the state feels it has available, because that's always the figure. You take what's available and then chop it up into 35 communities.
Yep.
And what I'm saying is,
I see.
it may not actually be all enrollment driven. It may be revenue driven, because again, I'm hearing from Newport, Middletown, and others, they're also getting decreases in state aid. And I don't think their enrollments have
Well,
fluctuated.
is every community in the state then decreasing? Because if it's availability of revenue from the state as a whole, then everybody should be seeing proportional decreases.
I think the schedule that had been circulated at some point did show that the majority of the public school districts were getting reduced. However, the charter schools were by and large, the beneficiaries of those reductions.
Yeah, and that's correct, Ms. Farnsworth.
Is that
We can share with you that document if you like. We get that to you tomorrow. It shows every community in Rhode Island. And
I know I had a copy of it. I was just trying to look for it.
So this would be the time to bang on our legislative delegation then, because that shouldn't be the
Absolutely.
case. Okay. Yeah, if you could, Peter, and
yeah, we'll get that to you tomorrow.
can we, yeah, and then put on the agenda for our next meeting, sort of discussion regarding net effect of the funding formula changes or something to that effect, you know?
Well, we just call it state aid. I know.
Yeah. But I'm just want to
You
make
want an
sure.
invitation out to those legislators for that meeting? That would be
Yeah,
January 25th.
actually, I think it'd be great. Not January 25th, that's tomorrow.
I mean, I'm sorry. Correct, February
Excuse-
8th.
Okay.
I
So,
would, I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Chairman.
go ahead, Sam.
I would also like a copy of that document, if that would be permitted.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sam, we'll get that to you. Put it on the email distribution list.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything that goes to the committee that is not an issue of personnel, contract negotiations or litigation should be coming to you guys as student representatives.
So you want me to sort of finish this conversation?
Yeah, go
This
ahead.
is this is the part where I don't believe you're going to decide tonight, but you're going to not have to start considering options.
Excuse me for a moment, please. Excuse me for a moment. I just had a comment or a question, just
Sure, go ahead,
for
Elaine.
my own, for myself. If Tiverton, along with Little Compton, Portsmouth, and Middletown, is anticipating that there probably is going to be such a cut in state aid, and if the state of Rhode Island isn't broke, where is that money going to go to? The money that everyone seems to be getting cut. My concern, or something that's been concerning to me for a long time, is taking the money away from public education and putting it to charter schools or mayoral academies. So will that come out at some point from the governor's office or from the state?
Well, I think that's
If
precisely
we
what
do
we
see
need.
that.
Yeah, I think that's precisely what we need to discern from this document that has come out so far and what we need to communicate to our legislative delegation.
And Elaine, that's exactly what that document will say.
That's
that-
what I was reading. That's what I was interpreting, but I wasn't sure.
And we
And
know that
that's a
has
big
been
concern. That's a big
priority.
concern.
Yes.
Public education getting so much less than other educative institutions. Thank you very much for letting me interrupt.
Sure.
Good question.
And just as a point of order, I'm gonna let everyone jump in as they need to right now, but if we get out of hand, maybe I'll ask for people to raise their hands, but I think right now we're okay, just sort of letting people ask as they want to. So go ahead, Peter.
So again, now that you have a clearer picture of where the revenue is and what our potential deficit is, and again, I'll emphasize that deficit is 1.5, regardless of state aid, only could get worse with state aid. Brings you to the point where, this is where you're going to have to start considering what our options are. I would concur or believe that none of you want to see staff cuts deeper than what we've made the last 2 years. And you know that prior to cutting any staff, we stripped every expense account. We did everything we possibly could do to streamline this budget. So it's already at a state that any additional cut has to go to personnel. We just can't strip anything else out of it. It's really at a bare bones level. So the things then that come to the mind that you're going to have to consider is one-time revenue again to possibly avoid some of these cuts. So we're predicting that there'll be about 800,000 in fund balance, and that when we get to the conversation about ESSER 3, you can see that we've in essence taken a whole bunch of positions and put FY23 next to them. Those are positions we most likely would cut and try to preserve them again with one-time revenue. That wouldn't cover the whole amount. That gets you to about 1.6 million. It would cover if state aid remained the same, that would make a solvent. If state aid doesn't, you're still looking at another 700,000. So that then raises the question, is there any conversation about, potentially the town council, the budget committee exceeding 4%? I know that's something that, I believe we can't ask, but my understanding is that that's something that could happen if they were willing to consider it. So again, I just put these out there for you for options right now. But that's our current state of affairs.
So that's kind of where I had gotten to in going through the budget book as well that we have, there are different scenarios. One is that the budget committee gives us the maximum amount from the local levy with whatever the projection is for state aid. And that's one thing that could go on the ballot. Or they could give us less. They have in the past at times, different years. The second is we put that identical budget on the ballot, which we have the right to do by the charter, but we've never actually done it. And we probably need to figure out what the actual process is there, because the charter itself is usually silent about processes like this. But it would basically represent what we voted a couple of weeks ago, a 4% increase in the local levy, and whatever is the state aid. What I think is probably not possible is that we, as the school committee, put on a greater number than that. And I think we had talked about that last time. Voting a $35 million budget, but we can't do that legally by the charter. And then the third option
And
is
do that legally by state law.
Yeah, that's not the charter.
That's right. Right. Yeah, state law. Sorry to have cited the wrong source, but at any rate. And then the third is, should we, because the only other option is either cutting things from our current budget or the projected budget, or looking to get an override. And I know some of the details of the process of that, but I can't pretend to be an expert at it. And maybe that's what we really need to discuss tonight, is whether or not we want to try and pursue that strategy, because it will certainly take some doing and turn a few heads. Mrs. Palish, you usually have one of the better grasps of these things. Or Mrs. Farber.
I think anything over what we're legally allowed to ask for, anything, the 4%, again, going back over many FTRs and FTMs, that really has to be a vote of the people. And I believe even a vote of the council. It's sort of out of our hands.
But right, so I guess that's my question is, do we go to the council now and say, look, this is, the sooner we make the argument, the more likely we have, I think, the chance to persuade people. Because I think, at least intuitively, I would say people will automatically start from no and then say, persuade me. Yeah, I guess so my understanding is it has to be a vote of the council and then also the legislature. That's probably just with bonding, not actually going over the cap.
Yeah, nope, it's, and I'm not sure in Tiverton, and I don't think it's ever been settled if it's a vote of the budget committee or a vote of the council. And then it's the people.
Right, so they have to vote the budget and the override separately, correct?
You have to vote for the override, and then you need a resolve to vote for or you need to vote for the budget, and then you need a resolution to vote to pass to vote for the override.
Right.
We've only done it one other time, and it was an FTM, so I really don't know what the process would be for an FTR.
Should we ask Ben to look into this and come to some sort of agreement with the town solicitor about what actually what the legal process is, so that we know how to proceed if we decide to do that? And I guess what are people's thoughts about pursuing that route? Diane?
I think it's smart to get Ben involved sooner rather than later, like right away. So that, because honestly, I have no idea what the process would look like, what the town requirements are, if there is a requirement of the General Assembly. Yeah, no idea. So this whole thing would be brand new to me, and certainly getting Ben on it quickly is important. I mean, it's pretty high level numbers. It's pretty easy to do the math here.
Right. Well, and I guess that's why I got to that point, was because the math was easy for a change. So yeah, it has not been done. I can tell you for sure, and Deb can verify this as well. It's not been done since we've had the financial town referendum as opposed to the financial town meeting. So.
You know, I think one thing that would be important for us to do too is to, and putting aside the state aid question, because that's something that definitely won't be resolved for some time. But, you know, even if we have level state aid, we're looking at $1.5 million.
Right.
And, you know, I don't know if it makes sense to draft the budget and, you know, spell it out exactly what's going to happen if we don't have that $1.5 million. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we have to be honest with people of what the repercussions that
Or
we're
the
looking at.
2.2. I would, you know, the 2.2 as well, if we're
Mhm.
projected.
Well, again, like I said, I putting aside the state aid question for the
Okay.
moment.
All right, yeah.
See, that's, if I may, Dr. Larkin.
Yep.
You know, the difficulty with that is, because I know you'll do this, I know you'll use fund balance, and I know you'll use ESSER 3. So if it's at 1.5 million, you in essence could cover that with that one-time money. Now that you know, that just means Armageddon FY24. So I just put that on the table for everyone to understand that the argument, you know, what's the argument? Because the counter argument is, well, you guys can cover it. And
That's exactly what I was going to say, Peter, because,
Yeah.
you know, I'm looking 8 slides in and we've got 800,000 in fund balance and 800,000 in ESSER 3, and that will be the counter argument.
Well, I think, yeah, and you know, if that's what the council says, say okay, or the voters say okay, that's what we'll do this year, and guess what next year is going to look like. And that's the argument we have to make, is let's try to be fiscally prudent. We've made every substantial increase with maybe one, maybe two, but I would say only 1 year where there was actually a substantial increase in the local levy in the last 10 years. And so, and in 2021, FY21, we had level funding when originally we had been budgeted, you know, we'd actually been voted out of the budget committee with 2% or something like that. And that, you know, everybody on the budget committee understands this, or should understand it, that it, you know, that approach to the budget, you know, echoes for the rest of the, you know, for all of time.
It
So
compounds.
yeah, I guess that's the banker
FY24.
term. Yeah,
Yeah.
I prefer to be a little bit more metaphorical.
That's the
So
banker in me.
exactly. So you know, now that the state is, I mean, the state should be doing this too. The state should be saying no one should see a decrease in regardless of what we do with the funding formula. And this is the argument I would make to the delegation, is no municipality should see a decrease in state aid this year. The
Agreed.
state is flush with cash. They, you know, use this pass through in FY20, or it was 21, I guess it was 21. Where all they did was they took all the federal money and used that to fund our state aid. We saw a decrease last year. And guess what kind of population has seen the worst hit in this pandemic? It's been people who are historically disadvantaged. It's been students. So, and that's measurable.
I'm healthcare.
And well, thank you. So, yeah. So I think that those are the arguments we need to make to them, is that, you know, nobody should see a decrease in state aid. If anything, they should be finding creative ways to give us more money. And then I think we have to make the argument to the town council, to the town, that, you know, you pay the piper now or you're going to pay them later, because we can't start to risk the BEP itself. So, but we need to have Ben look into exactly what the process of doing an override is to make us whole. And it's really looking back to FY21 and saying, you know, we level funded, we took that, we actually had the option of placing something on the ballot to increase the budget that year, but we were trying to be good citizens and recognizing that nobody knew what revenue was going to be like. And as it turned out, revenue was actually better than it was. Well, they didn't come around and sort of say, oh yeah, the revenue was better, here's some more money. Now I'll leave aside the whole issue of the capital. They did give us $2 million in that, and that's good, but we probably shouldn't even talk about that.
But Peter, that 1.5 million, that doesn't even include bringing back some of the things that we lost, correct?
Great point.
FY21, yeah.
Yeah, great point. No, it just, it keeps us whole from where we are currently.
Anybody else have any other comments of where we are? So if I can summarize what we're saying, we're going to ask the legislative delegation to come at our first meeting in February to talk about the funding formula, and that no municipality should see a decrease in aid. We're going to ask Ben to look into what is the process by which we proceed with a over the cap budget for this year, given the sort of vagaries of the charter. And I think we need to look at, you know, if we say, okay, we're not going to close it with fund balance or ESSER money, what would we be cutting in order to keep us at the 33, what is it?
Yeah, 33.
5.
33, 531, 278.
Right. You know, what does that budget look like?
Yep.
What does you know, again, recognizing the goals of 35, 52, 859, and kind of go from there. Does anybody else have any thoughts or things they want to bring up, or Peter, you want to continue with where you were?
The only, no, that I think the three things you've articulated are perfect. The legislators get Ben involved and show you what a $33 million budget would look like if you don't allocate any one-time revenue to it. And we'll have all that prepared for the 8th. I'm not sure when we're going to be in front of the budget committee. So just wanted to have a dialogue with you about that. You know, you've seen our typical, you know, I would replicate the same presentation that I gave to the school committee, that overview of our budget, what a level service budget is, what 4% is. I just want to make sure, I know we probably have some time here, but is there any suggestions, commentary now about what you want us to release to the budget committee? Any concerns there?
Before we go there, Peter, just Jerry, one point.
Yep.
The General Assembly's back in session.
Yep.
If we can't get our delegation in at our next regularly scheduled meeting, would we want to entertain a special meeting on a different date?
I certainly would.
Having them in.
Yeah, I don't think any, yeah, I certainly would. I'm open to others' thoughts.
I wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Elaine or Deb, any
Diane?
thoughts? Yep, go ahead, Lynn.
So you're saying before our regularly scheduled meeting in February,
Oh,
or
at any time.
before our March meeting?
Really,
would say
anytime.
For the, okay.
So we
Okay,
invite
just
them to
wanted to
our
be sure.
regular meeting in February, but if they say we're in session, which is usually most
Right,
weeknights.
and that's
from-
gonna be for,
about, so they meet either they're having committee meetings or legislative meetings most weekdays from, I don't know, usually about 3 o'clock in the afternoon until sometime into the night. So if we invite them to our first meeting in February, they may say, sorry, I've got, 100 other meetings that day. So we would, find a time when that's good for them. That
Yes.
maybe a
yes.
Saturday morning, that might be, I'm guessing it's probably going to be a Saturday morning, actually.
And if we just do that, it should be relatively short, so it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, it'd be a special meeting just to talk to them, not a business meeting to address other things.
Okay, so just to make sure I have this clear, send them an invitation for the 8th. And if the response back, that's an inconvenient night, then work with you on an alternative date.
Correct.
And perhaps ask them for some alternate dates.
For some alternate dates when they're available.
So back to the budget book.
Yeah, so Peter, you were asking about what you want us to share with the budget committee. I have not
Right.
heard anything from them yet about what they want to, when they want us to come before them. I would say the first 2 sections are useful to them. Whether or not they go into the whole tab that's labeled salary and wages, that's all contractual. I don't think it's reasonable, although I was gratified to see I make $10 a month more than anybody on the committee. Who knew?
Spend it wisely, Dr. Larkin.
Yeah, I had no idea. I should divide it among the other 4 of you, $250 each per month. The operating expenses, I don't know, they might want to see that. And new requests in capital, I'm not sure. That's my sort of gloss of it. Anybody else have any other thoughts? Additional information they may or may not want. That's
I
a-
have a few comments.
Okay.
I think that overall, the budget book presentation needs to be a little bit more simple and concise. I think it would be helpful if the sections each would have a table of contents and or page numbers. If I'm having a hard time getting around it, I can imagine the budget committee members would as well. As a suggestion, and I know I made this suggestion a number of months back, based upon what is available online for Portsmouth, they had a really good budget presentation. And focusing on a one pager with, here's what was approved this year, here's what we're proposing, here's the increase or decrease in the percent change. As a one-page summary to be followed by the detail at the UCOA level, as well as a column to explain any significant changes would be helpful, I feel, to someone who's going through there and reading it. I would appreciate it be either all landscape or all portrait when it comes to numbers. I think asking people to flip is tough. And then certainly extra discussions around those pain points that we've all seen and talked about, right? The transportation issues, the special ed, the technology spending. It may not be a big increase this year, but it's something that a lot of people, it's big numbers that just didn't exist 10 years ago. And I think, a lot of questions tend to come from that. So definitely a succinct listing of the technology asks and breakdown of, where is the money going, that ties to those summary pages in the front, I think would be fantastic. I know that's a lot, But I really think just getting to the point and making sure that everything is concise will probably serve us well.
Anybody else?
I guess my overall comment, and I think it's just the way probably that I review. I think everything, this operating expense detail, the UCOA detail. And then, you know, you have, it's basically, this is the budget. This is all the detail budget. This is all the detail anyone would want. I think this sort of needs to be your source document, and then everything should just flow from that. I had a hard time with some of the summaries tying in where numbers were coming from for salaries, where numbers were coming from. And I know they're probably in there because it's just different iterations of you know, you probably left some things out, but I'm just wondering if this is your source document and you've got, you know, about 8 subcategories, you know, that those kind of are your, you know, your changes tie to those. It's not going to change your narrative at all. It just, I know when I was trying to start with that and then go forward, I struggled. And numbering.
Well, I can
yes.
tell you that everything absolutely ties. I can tell you that.
Well, I know it does, Amy, but for instance, I'm looking at total personnel services and compensation, and I'm looking for the change of 867,775, and I'm looking for the total proposed budget of 18,149,070. And I know you probably get there, but it's just,
I'm not following.
Yeah, where are you talking about? In the UCOA
so
data? Where the-
FY3, so you've got a wage chart that says FY3 salary and wage distributions 16,752. So, you know, I want to go back here and I want to see, you know, 16,752, but yet I see 18,149,070. And I know it's because there's things that aren't in there, but it just makes it hard to figure out.
Well, if you look on the UCOA detail pages, you know, I did a summary down at the bottom that addresses your questions. So it explains that just for salaries, which object codes are in there.
Yeah, I just found it difficult. There's a chart that talks about the major expense drivers: medical, dental, special ed, transportation. And what I was trying to do is, okay, you gave me the dollar amounts, what's the percentage change? So again, I went back to this to try to figure it out. And I know they're probably there in one way or shape or another, but
Deb, which tab are you in? 'Cause
I'm looking at the operating expenses
Yeah.
tab.
Okay, but then
And-
you're. yeah,
And
go ahead.
then the things that I was looking at is total personnel services and compensation.
What line is that?
It's just the subtotal.
Oh, yeah,
of the
got
whole.
it. Yep.
So I was looking at these subtotals and I'm trying to find that in the summary. I'm trying to compare, because honestly, this is going to be your source. This is your source document for what's increasing, what's decreasing. And I know John Edwards in particular last year, he started with this. And so if you understand this, and then everything sort of summarizes from that. And like I said, I know we get there, but I had a hard time doing it.
Because.
Well, because some of the numbers don't tie, because we're pulling out just maybe 90% of that UCOA group.
When you say that, what do you mean in the first tab, the supporting?
So if I may, Dr. Larkin, so for example, Deb.
You know what, Amy, you could do it however you want. I'm just telling you, it was very confusing for me, and I do numbers all the time.
Well, but I'm also responding to requests that you folks made last year in adding some of this information. So, for example, last year I recall being asked to make sure that the salary pages add up to the specific UCOA lines that add up to those salaries, which I did, and I did a reconciliation. So in terms of that, but then for Dr. Sanquioni's charts, I used what you're calling the starting point, all the UCOA codes, to be consistent with what I did last year, so as not to change. There was a strong emphasis last year about not changing anything in the way we do things. So what I've done this year is almost virtually identical to what I did last year. I was just providing you some more detail. So I guess I'm not understanding what it is that you would like to see differently.
So
The
Deb,
source for the information.
It's fine.
Well,
Okay.
I'm happy to accommodate. I just don't understand.
I heard one thing, Deb, you want to see the percent increases, right?
And that is something that they put on that Portsmouth budget. If you refer to what they're doing, it's so plain and simple. It has the approved for this year, the proposed for next year, what the dollar changes and what the percent changes.
So are we?
As does ours.
Yeah, so there are different tabs, if you will. So there's the operating expenses, and that I think is tied to object codes.
Correct.
There is what is called supporting data. That's sort of a from 30,000 feet view.
Yeah, that's.
You can go into the salaries and wages and see everybody's salary. That's how I found out I make more.
Well, Dr. Larkin,
And-
just for
yep.
an example, go to your chart that says major FY23 major expense drivers. It's about 20 in,
In which tab?
under supporting data.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's part of the PowerPoint.
Yep, okay.
So when I was looking at 369, 342 medical and dental, I was like, I wonder what percent change that is, because dollars don't tell me anything. So I went back to the detail and I went to total benefits and I see 431,965.
Okay. So I think maybe, Deb, what you're saying is not so much in the UCOA data or the what is the tab called operating expenses. That's all fairly.
Oh, that's fine. And that's lovely. And that's very useful.
Yeah, but what you're saying is that in what is called, and this is sort of what a lot of people will look at rather than the operating expenses, is understanding things like major expense drivers. If you can look at FY21 versus 22 versus 23 kind of thing. Is that what you're getting at?
That's my suggestions, that we do 22 versus the proposal for 23.
Okay.
No, I have no problem with that. I think that's fine. It's when I'm looking at the summary. So for instance, if you're looking at that capital detail, it says total purchase professional and technical services, and it shows a change of 98,896.
I don't even know what page you're on. Where are you?
Well, this is why it would be nice to have them numbered.
Yep.
So in the operating expenses, the second page,
In the operating expenses, okay.
second page.
Those are numbered, but
The
yep, okay.
the last column, the subtotal on the very
Okay.
bottom.
Yep,
And again, this is just because this is how I look at this. I understand every single UCOA line item. I understand every subcategory and what's changing, because that's your budget.
Yep.
So then I was looking for, well, where is this total purchase professional and technical services of 98,896 when we're doing the summaries? And we're pulling things out differently, I guess, than these subcategories on this detail. And I just found it confusing. And
Okay.
and I mean, and that's fine. If people don't have, no one else has an issue with it, then it's fine.
I agree with you, Deb, and I would go one step further to say we don't need it in the PowerPoint. If we got rid of it, we wouldn't have to worry about it matching the UCOA data.
Although the UCOA data is that's the individual line item that drives the budget. And if
Yep.
I was the budget committee, I'd want to see it.
And they should. That's what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that the PowerPoint items that are perhaps derived differently than what you see straight up on the UCOA and different, at times difficult to get to, is maybe what we should be considering taking
Oh,
out.
gotcha.
So
Yep.
as to have less confusion, you know, one item too, in the PowerPoint, and this was something I meant to bring up at the last meeting, under the FY23 budget summary that has the categories personnel and benefit, energy, special ed, it's
Yep, I got it.
5 pages from the back.
Yep.
Transportation is listed as 1,995,415.
Yep.
You know, when I add the UCOA lines, it's 2.1 million, no matter how I look at it. So there's got to be a way, you know, I'm a lay person. I don't know how, Amy, you came up to the number on the PowerPoint, but it's not clearly matching the UCOA. And so, you know, maybe just getting rid of these PowerPoint pages with numbers all over them that seem to cause some confusion would help.
Well, certainly one of the things we want is to be clear, I guess.
Mhm.
I appreciate the detail and the granularity that you can get in the tab called operating expenses.
Absolutely.
And the question is, does the budget committee want that?
Oh, absolutely, they will.
They will. All right.
And my suggestion would be to actually display it either in landscape with all these gazillion columns, or cut it down to just the columns they need to know, which would be approved this year, proposed next year, increase, decrease, and percent change.
In the UCOA data or in the?
In the UCOA form, which I know
Okay.
could be produced.
Which is, it's there.
It's buried amongst a million columns.
I think for us, it
The
was,
landscape.
I
column.
think for our purposes, it was extremely useful to see how we got from the budget and then all of the Newport region assessment allocation. But to your point, maybe Diane, maybe it's not useful for them.
Deb, that was a specific request from you last year.
Yep, nope, I said, this is great for us, but I think
Okay.
Diane's point is maybe they don't need those columns. The budget, being the budget committee.
Okay.
Is that what you're saying, Diane? Simplify that.
I am, and I say that really, I mean, we're here on the school committee, we're talking about this stuff all year long. Their time in their seats is limited to a couple of short months. And I would like us to at least be able to send them right to what they need to see to tell the story of what we need.
So maybe you include the Newport County Regional Special Assessment Allocation columns. So FY3 budget, total FY22 budget, total increase, decrease. And then honestly, I would leave a couple of the years, 21 and 20 maybe.
I mean, it's okay for historical purposes in the appendix, if you will. But for the
Oh,
primary
I gotcha. Okay.
section, you know, for those people who really want to go back and do a comparison to previous years, good. But to have a presentation right from the start that is very succinct, that says, okay, here's what we were approved for last year, here's what we're looking for this year. Here are the calculations of the differences and the discussions for any swings.
And I know your pie charts are really easy to understand because it gives a very quick visual, Peter. But maybe base that off of the UCOA data. What are there?
Which it is, Deb. Those charts. So I have one file that I work with, and those charts are included in that file. And so, for example, those charts. So for example, like the salary and wage distribution is just the salaries and wages and the related FTEs versus the total compensation line that you're speaking about, that summary total. And then in terms of the pie chart, where it's total budgeted expenses, those do correlate to those subtotals.
So if I did personnel and benefits 70%, if I did, that would, if I went to the UCOA data, 18,149,070 is 70% of the total.
That plus the benefits, which so it'd be the 5100 series and the 5200 series. They add up to 24,
Gotcha.
462, 400.
So those I like because it's just a real quick visual. I think the starting place one is fine. I think it's to Diane's point, when you start getting into some of these other, budget summary where you're doing personnel benefits, energy, special ed, transfer. I mean, I know, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to give them the big.
So if I can cut in here a little bit, I think it's important that we have the UCOA data in whatever number of years you want, as the granularity that some will refer to, most probably will not, but will let us understand what a given line item or object code is doing year over year. Then to Diane's, I think, point, and correct me if I'm misinterpreting it, but in the PowerPoint, so again, there's the first tab, which is just sort of a budget summary, and then there's something called supporting data, which is a PowerPoint.
Yep.
It seems like when you get into the budget summary, and again, it's probably a good idea to have these numbered so that we can all be on the same page, if you will, but there's a slide that starts with the FY23 budget summary.
That's where it starts to get funky.
Right, and it gets personal and benefits, energy, special education. If you can do a year on, it'll be helpful for the budget committee to understand year on year what those different categories of expense are doing.
True, and what I'm saying is, so why don't you use the UCOA natural subcategories in the back,
Yeah.
and it all ties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, because, for example, energy is buried in a series of UCOA codes. There's not a single, for example, I believe those are in the, I'm not sure if it's the 53 or the 5400s, what series it's in, but for example, like electricity and water and gasoline and fuel oil and all of that are specific object codes within a certain group.
Right.
Right, but if they want to go see the detail of what's driving, they'll go and look.
Yeah, so I
Right.
think the point is that then create an analogous energy number for 22, 21. And if they say, well, where's the detail? And you say it's in these,
No,
series of.
see, Jerry, I
PowerPoint.
wouldn't do that. I would use the natural subgroups that are already occurring in the detail. And you're going to see it goes up 70%. And if they say, why did total purchase service and technical services go up by 32%, you make them go look at the detail.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying too, I guess.
That's my suggestion was to have a column right within the UCOA detail to call out those line items that is, showing significance.
Or highlight them somehow in yellow
Mhm.
or something.
Is that doable without ruining your life, Amy?
It depends on when you want it, only because, which I know we're getting, not to jump the gun, we're getting getting to next is the ESSER 3 spending plan. And that is gonna take probably a week to enter into Acela grants exclusively. So to make these changes, I'm happy to do that. It just depends on when you want it.
Well, the budget committee hasn't even met yet, so. I think we
Yeah,
have
they
time.
haven't given us a date, so I think if
Really, by our
again-
next meeting should be fine.
there's 11 people on that budget committee and they have probably 23 different perspectives on this because they each get 2.1.
And it's really just a couple slides if you look at it.
Yeah, no, I understand. And that budget summary, that was my creation. I mean, I tried to just call out the major categories to make it as simple as possible for them to understand. What our budget.
The issue is that they'll say, well, how much was it last year? And that's what
And they'll
the,
also say, well, how come I can't tie it to you?
Yeah, that's exactly. You will, I
Well,
know
some
that
will.
happens a lot with not last year's budget committee on the budget committee before is, well, where is it? I can't.
Right.
yeah. No, then not all of them, but some will definitely go hunting for.
Well, like I said, not even for the budget committee. For me, I went hunting.
Would you like to be on the budget committee?
No, but I am on the
There's
school committee and this
openings.
is one of our few responsibilities now.
No, I agree, but I think there's some openings.
Yeah, so it's only a couple slides in the PowerPoint, and I see what you're saying, so.
All right, so
I mean, but you guys, I mean, if everybody agrees, I mean, otherwise, Peter, if this works and everyone's fine with it, it's just like I said, I just couldn't understand it.
I think they're gonna want year-on-year data, even in the sort of 20,000 feet PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Well,
They're
and that's why I
definitely-
said, I think it's just easier if it ties to the
Yep.
UCOA detail and then it's like, go look at it. You
Okay,
got 4
yeah.
years of it there.
Then some will definitely want to do that, so we should provide it to them. So that's that. So we do
Peter, I
not
have one
yet.
other comment.
Yep, go ahead.
Peter,
Yep.
maybe one other, but I definitely have another. The actual projected enrollment, don't change the charts, find how it is. Could you just note that that's out of district and in district? Because I remember people trying to go tie it to RIDE. Well, it's not going to.
Right.
So if you could just note somewhere what it includes, even under just a little in parentheses underneath it or something.
Yeah, it's all Tiverton students that we're responsible for that we pay for.
Right, so it's out of district plus the enrollment numbers you'd see on RIDE.
Yeah.
However you want to say that, because like I said, I remember that was an issue before, is people saying, well, RIDE only says, whatever, 1691, how come you have 1801? Well, I'm looking at, 2021. Well, there's a reason. It's
Yeah.
because RIDE data doesn't include certain kids, correct?
So we had a slide on the enrollment at our last meeting on the 11th, I think, that actually did have.
It does. We get it in detail, I think, every month from Amy or every 2 weeks.
Yes. You do.
I think that was the first time that we got it as the committee, that the out of district
Oh.
placements number.
No, we've been getting that for a
Yeah,
long
we've been
time.
getting
Gary.
that for a while.
It's always on there. It's a line on the enrollment.
Okay, well, for
And
the
the
first
slide
time ever,
itself
I noticed that we got it.
The slide
think that's-
itself is fine if we just define what you're
You find
showing.
it. I got you.
All right. Anyway, what I was going to say was, for the first time ever, I noticed that we get it, I guess. But I think that's a useful thing to point out to the budget committee, as well as there was a slide that Sarah Krager had that showed our number of IEPs holding relatively constant, but the average cost per IEP had gone up by, I want to say 33% or so, something like that.
Yep.
It may have been more or less. But I would just throw that slide in there as well, just so they know that, you know, we're not making these things up, I guess. So that was we started with a question of what are we sending to the budget committee. I think maybe you guys have
Sounds like we're going to be talking about this again.
regretting you asked, but
No.
have we finished with that? Okay, hearing no objection. What else, Peter?
ESSER 3, this is critical. We need your approval for this, you know, hopefully tonight, if not tomorrow. And we've got to file this application by the end of the month. And we kind of made you aware of it. I know we've sent it to you several times. So if you want to move to that topic, I could address that.
I'm okay to move to that. Is everybody okay moving to that?
Yes.
Okay. So go for it.
All right, so we've sent you this spending plan. It's much more concise than the one you originally received. It's you can see that some costs being spent in FY22 this year and a lot of it being deferred to FY23 to protect us in case, you know, we have to make those drastic budget. But it also has to meet the spirit of the ESSER 3 application, which talks about curriculum enhancements, things you're doing to help kids, you know, enhance the learning through the pandemic and so forth. So if we look at the list, we had already talked about the kids we allow to go to online school connections academy.
Can I ask, Peter, before you go any further, do you think you could share it on the screen?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing
Yes.
because I'm hunting for it in my email.
I just found a version of it. I'm not sure if I have the most recent, so I just would rather you have it.
Yeah.
Is it the one dated 1/19, Peter?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Perfect.
I don't find it. Oh, here it is.
It's highlighted.
Yeah, it has.
Couple of pa-
Okay, now I got it.
And do you see it on the screen now?
Yep.
Okay, just let me see if I can show this a little better than. It is there. It's my view button. There it is. Picture this. Hold on a second. All right, and hopefully that everyone have a good view of
That's
that
great.
one.
Yep.
All right,
Yep.
so kind of go down the list. Again, we separated FY22, FY23. We've talked about the Connections Academy. We have certain students that need to be there for a myriad of reasons. And then we moved in now. So this is where we get into meeting the spirit of the grant itself and having to have this approved by RIDE. So we've got a couple curriculum enhancements here. The science curriculum is not a new curriculum. It's Amplify has been in Tiverton for several years now. It's just replacing outdated text, outdated science equipment, or science equipment that has been used up, that's no longer available to our students. Z-Space comes in. I know we've showed this to you a couple times, so it's augmented reality, virtual reality. We're using this to enhance our CTE program. So a lab that would allow our carpentry kids and our engineering students and our chemistry students and our biology students and our anatomy and physiology students all to work in an environment that's 3D, that allows them to do experiments, to build houses, to do engineering projects and all. It has a great reputation of enhancing kids' learning, allowing them to retain that information, and certainly something we feel like would make a difference at both the middle school and the the middle school and the high school, which is why it's on here. The math specialist, we've talked to you about that several times. We want to have one at each elementary school. We had 2 at the to start this year, and we want to finalize that starting in January at that 3rd elementary math specialist. And you saw our math when we went through our scores. Our math is a little depressed. We want to provide a little more support for students there. The 1% raise is something we've talked about repetitively with you. That's where this comes in here. And then we come into these highlighted ones. So these are the changes we made since the last time we shared this to you. We're in the process of our 5-year capital plan. We had a $100,000 grant from RIDE to seed that. We've used that amount of money already. And so now we're into what's unbudgeted for us. And rather than, I'm not sure how we would cover this, putting this here again, because we can tie it to educational enhancements. When we show the 5-year plan, we feel like it would be approved. So we've got an offset here for FY22 and an offset here for FY23. Now, the good thing about this is that these costs are reimbursable. So again, we've heard tentatively, I guess, from the budget, from the town council, that whatever's reimbursable would come back to the schools. So if in fact that happens, a good portion of this revenue here would come back to us.
Can I stop you there? Yeah, go ahead, Diane.
I don't think that's the case. I think the case is that the town council would allow the reimbursements to go into a restricted account that would continue to be under their purview. It would not come to the school's account.
Directly. No, I think that's that. And I think that's actually a best case scenario. I'm not sure that we can really rely on.
Yeah. And that's the other question I have. I don't think that was in writing at all.
No, but there was a comment, and I absolutely
there is, and this is
swear
also
by
in
this, that
writing,
this money would come back to the schools. Now, however that happens, that the particulars of that weren't, but here nor there, I guess I'll make the point. It's reimbursable where that money goes. Okay, maybe we don't know, but it would be nice if it came back to us.
So yeah, I guess I'll pile on a little bit here. That was a sentiment that was expressed, and like all sentiment, you get what you pay for. So I'm not sure that we can. It's a nice thought, but I wouldn't use that as a selling point for that expenditure. Before we move on from this, so we had $500,000 from RIDE to start the plan, and we've gone through that already.
We had $100,000. We had
$100,000
grant that seeded us to begin the process with RGB.
And that's basically gone to RGB for the work they've done thus far, which is substantial.
And remember, this started last year.
Right.
So we've been working with them now for about 18 months.
Okay. So then we're anticipating having to spend another $477,000 to them just for this plan?
To them or to, well, yeah, it would be to them, but it gets parceled out to cost estimators, to people who are helping us create this plan for construction documents, anything that's going to be funded, so on and so forth. So I guess it all goes to RGB, but then there's, I guess, a lot of subcontractors that are part of it.
Okay. I'm not saying, that seems like an awfully high amount of money.
Yeah, we've spoken to them about it, and they assure us that they do this with many districts, and we're in line with that kind of work. And as you already alluded to, Dr. Locken, it's an extensive amount of work. They've been great to work with so far. They've been very responsive to our needs. We certainly can continue to talk to them about cost and so forth. But again, you want to get this plan submitted, which we will do in February, which gets us a May approval. And then, as you know, everything that's on that list then qualifies for reimbursement, 35 minimum, but 40% on most of our items.
And that's for the full 5-year plan?
Yeah, anything that's on that plan.
So the engineering work to put together that plan wouldn't be reimbursable?
These two items here, the work is reimbursable. That's why it's in yellow. Yep.
Okay. And I guess to my point, it's about forget what the number is. It's maybe $30 million worth of work. Not that we got $30 million to spend on it right
Yeah, I
now.
think it's more 20 million, which you're not
Okay.
beholden to do all the work and spend it, but it's good to have a concise plan at articulating all the needs of the district. And then, as school committee, you
And-
cherry pick off that what you'd like to do.
And where did this estimate come from? The 200 and 277?
From them directly. I asked them to provide me with cost projections.
Okay. Still seems high. So I wish I were an
There is the
architect.
capital plan that's in our book. Is that the most up-to-date one?
Yes, it is. But there is a more up-to-date one coming soon.
So the 24.5 million, okay.
And you think that will pass the criteria for?
Yes, from
This-
the research we've been doing, because we can tie it into educational enhancements and things that will allow this, will benefit students. And then the rest of, just to wrap this up, starting where I have the cursor now, FY23, and then everything below it, what you're asking at our next school committee meeting is to show you what a $33 million budget will look like. Well, here's the preview. This is what's going. Plus more. This doesn't even, this adds up to about 700,000 here. So why we're putting it into ESSER 3 is to allow you as the school committee to make decisions on positions we'd like to retain in case, depending on what our final budget number is. I think it's a wise decision to, have this available to you.
What's happening to the positions that you got rid of so that you could have the RGB stuff on here? We're just not gonna fill them? Or you're looking for other revenue
Yeah.
sources?
Under funding sources, yep. It's just, it's a tough position to be in right now. So again, we're asking for your approval on this to again, meet the spirit of the grant. We've enhanced some education things for our students. We provided a educational program for our students in the academy here. And then we've got a whole bunch of positions here we can justify as beneficial to our students. And then what's in yellow, we can justify based upon what's behind it. For example, in these capital plans are the redoing of the media centers in all of our schools. It has in there some of the other educational things, some safety things and so forth. And because it has that component to it, we feel like it's reimbursable or can be part of ESSER 3.
I guess I'm still stuck on this RGB allocation.
I am too.
Well, they're on the agenda for tomorrow night, so I certainly could have them, break this down for you and explain
No,
what the cost.
I'm not calling into question their number even, or the that they haven't been good partners. I think they have been. I'm concerned about using the ESSER money towards that. Shouldn't this be something that's sort of allocated over the course of several years into operations?
Well, it wouldn't be several years. I mean, they're going to look to get paid in FY22 and
Yeah.
FY23.
Cash has gotta come out.
I mean, we could come back to you and ask you to take it out of fund balance, but it's just,
Whether it comes here or it comes out of there.
right. It's fungible, right? It's
Is it a requirement that we spend this close to $500,000 in order to get our capital plan submitted?
We believe so. I mean, this is what we're being asked to be prepared to have. Again, I could ask RGB to give an accounting of this tomorrow night. Give you a little more detail on that.
I think we do need the detail on that.
Okay.
I mean, when you, I wish we had known this before we endeavored to put together a 5-year plan, honestly. We're in a position where we're laying people off left and right, and it just seems.
Well, we need the 5-year plan.
You have to have the 5-year plan, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a 5-year plan or you don't get the reimbursement, you don't get.
Right. You're looking at millions of dollars of reimbursement.
We will get
Aside from
dinged other
bathrooms,
ways.
what are we gonna do?
Huh?
aside from bathrooms, what are we gonna do?
Oh, you never know. We could put all of this out to bond.
No, but we will get dinged in other ways.
Right.
So it's not that we don't need a 5-year plan. It is the
Lot of
finance.
money to
of it.
put together a plan, I agree.
So
Yeah, there's a lot behind it, and we could have RGB go through it.
I think it will make us all a lot more comfortable to get some more detail on it. Or at least it'll make Diane and me comfortable. I don't know about the rest of it.
No, I agree. It's a big number. And especially where we're moving staff to fund it.
Yeah.
Off of it.
Yeah, but again, it's either here or it's in fund balance, and you know.
No, agree. It's
yeah.
just to Jerry and Diane's point, 477,000, they need to give us a little bit of background about why it's costing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And they'll be prepared to do that tomorrow night.
Right.
And one more question on the curriculum items. The science curriculum and the Z space, which I guess I equate to curriculum. I don't
No, it is curriculum.
Okay. Are these must-haves? I know you're saying that the science curriculum for TMS, I know you've explained that one pretty well, that you have to update your materials, you have to update the pieces of a curriculum you already have. The Z space, you're recommending 103,000 for that. Will we have a continued need next year for Connections Academy that we're not considering?
Yeah.
Will we have continued social and emotional needs that will be forced to bring in additional staff to address? I just,
Well, these are fun. This is funding for FY22 now.
Right.
have you already purchased it?
We've got it on hold pending your approval. We've done that. I would say to you, it's not an enhancement. It is the curriculum for engineering, carpentry, anatomy, physiology, biology, and chemistry. It's just allowing our students to access that curriculum using 21st century learning opportunities. And again, that's part of what we have to show in this grant. And again, you've heard me say this multiple times. Most communities aren't using ESSER for what Tiverton has to use it. Most communities are using this money for things like these two things beyond that, and then adding on additional staff or adding on. I just feel like it's maybe the one true advantage that we're giving our kids out of this entire grant. And having evaluated it, having all of our administrators evaluate it and our teachers, it's a real difference maker.
Peter, is the Z space technology the thing that I saw when I came for, I don't know, some meeting?
Yeah, well,
They were in a virtual environment and they
Yep.
were, oh yeah, it was amazing.
it's amazing, and it's high learning and all that. So when you're talking 1.7 million, and we're basically saying, well, truly, we're spending 100,000 on one enhancement. We've got to show that. It's just, RIDE's going to come back to us and say, look, and it just, I would say, again, recognizing everything you said, Ms. Farnworth, that we have competing needs and we have a lot of, potential issues down the line.
I have one question, if I may.
Go ahead.
So the just building on the whole curriculum question, both of those, they're like one-time purchases, right? It's not purchasing a new textbook every year for the Amplify program, and it's not like a subscription for the virtual reality. It's just one software that you're buying.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
And Connections Academy, we're already in the middle of it. We have to pay for it.
Right.
Yeah, that covers us this year, and next year we'll have to figure it out. And,
Are you anticipating continuing that next year?
I guess the answer to that relies on this pandemic and where we're going and so forth. I think we're gonna have to be a little more judicious about who we allow to attend, if we allow people to attend, but we want kids back in our school system. We want kids back in our classrooms. This was sort of a bridge year for certain families and certain students. And I think we may have to, bring that bridge down and look at education again, like we always have delivered it.
How many students are in that this year?
10, 11, maybe somewhere in that range. I can get you an exact accounting if you're looking for it.
My recollection.
Currently, it's 15 students.
15.
Okay, so fair number. And that's through the approval of the principal, is my recollection, is that right?
The principals and the principals bring it to me. I have the final sign off on it.
Okay. Okay,
So that Connections Academy, that's either going to be here or it's going to be in the budget. I mean, it's going to be in one way or another. But you're thinking that it fits with the grant because it is the Connections Academy that we've done because of COVID.
Exactly. And,
Yes.
part of the grant's a requirement that says you've got to do, you may recall in ESSER 2, for example, we've got all our tutoring in ESSER 2 and our after school things and like that. And again, a requirement of the grant is how are you addressing the needs created by the pandemic? And for ESSER 3, we use Rhode Island Connections Academy to meet that.
And then that plays into, I'm guessing, the choice of the types of staff as well.
Yeah.
Counselors, specialists, guidance, that it fits within what the grant was intended to do.
Exactly. Anytime you see new on the right-hand column in, that's a position we'd like that we either had, we don't have anymore, or a position we'd like to add. But it allows you the flexibility, all that revenues in FY23 to really decide how best to use it. What's listed there may not be what it is. It may be totally retaining a whole bunch of positions.
Well, that's a good point, Peter. In this position we're in, do we have any capability to bring in new positions at all? Even with
that whole list may become current people we're hiring. Oh, currently employed, excuse me.
okay.
To that
Um,
effect,
Mhm.
sorry.
No,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Sam.
Thank you. The adjustment counselor, when I was in middle school, I don't recall there ever being a position like that. What exactly is the job of an adjustment counselor?
Great question. And it's
maybe we should have had one.
no doubt. Equated to a person who does counseling with our most needy students, but the main difference is they make that connection with the home. So they're finding out and working with a family to help a student succeed at school. So there's a lot of outreach from an adjustment counselor to the family, what the family needs are, how the student fits into the family, and how the student fits into our school. So, most schools have these or are adding these positions with ESSER 3. And in light of this pandemic right now, it's a position that can really make a big difference.
Yeah, I think that's very important.
So Peter, if we take out RGB, the curriculum and the connections, about half of this is still money that we're adding to operations.
Not that we're adding, that we're funding.
Or well, some of it's were about I guess the last three positions at the bottom are
Adding.
Yeah, I would look at it as just this whole tranche of money gives you the flexibility to decide what to do when our final budget is decided.
all right. Yeah, okay.
And I will just, I promise this is my last comment, but to see that, this is the only way we're able to give staff raises is on the back of one-time funds. That is definitely not sustainable.
No. Great point.
And that's an add to operations.
Yeah, that is
It is.
absolutely gonna be on our base. And it's built in the budget book you have, it is built in there. So,
So if we got it in the budget, we would actually. All right,
That's for 22, Jerry.
right, that's what I'm
You're in
saying.
now. Mhm. Now
Oh,
22.
yeah, that's true. Yep.
we built it into the base of FY23's budget.
Correct.
Yeah, got it.
So do you need a motion, Peter?
I do, and if you wanna, I mean, I'm fine with, I know you have some questions about this here, so if you could approve it, maybe everything on here minus the RGB till you get explanation, that would really help us as far as writing this whole thing up and getting it almost submitted on time, so.
Do you have enough time if we ask them questions tomorrow for us to come
Yes.
back for a second vote?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll make a motion that absent the RGB 200,000 and RGB 5-year capital plan of 277,100, that we approve the ESSER 3 spending plan as submitted.
I'll second.
All right, is there any other discussion? Elaine, have you had an opportunity? You haven't really.
I have nothing. I have nothing else. I had a couple of questions that were answered.
Okay. Anyone else wants to chime in? All right, I'm gonna ask for a vote. Diane,
Yes,
Deb,
Yes,
Elaine,
Yes,
I vote yes. And we have this posted for tomorrow, right?
You do, you have RGB on tomorrow night.
Okay,
5
All right.
So I will give them a call, make sure they're ready for that.
there anything else?
No, you're just back at it tomorrow night.
All right. Who thought it would end this early?
I'm sorry, but I put myself on mute. So we'll plan to return to a budget discussion in our first meeting in February, is that?
I think we're still posted for tomorrow night for budget too, but maybe we're not.
Well,
No,
I
you
mean,
are.
for any follow-ups from our discussion
Yeah,
tonight.
I'm hoping that we don't have too much more to say tomorrow night in 24 hours, but
No,
this is Tiverton, so.
oh, you realize that now. You didn't know where you were, Jerry. You lost.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
second,
Elaine,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes,
Deb,
yes.
I vote yes, so we're adjourned.
good evening.